Welcome back to Business Talk. I'm your host, Michael Avery. And as Peter Drucker once said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So today we're diving deeper into a topic that's critical for any business that's serious about continuity and resilience: work area recovery seats. Joining us once again is Willem Olivier, the CEO of Resilient Innovations. Willem has been a trailblazer in the business continuity management industry in South Africa for over 2 decades, and today he's here to help us unpack some of the nuances of work area recovery, as well as the shift in demand from syndicated to dedicated seats and the unique advantages of managed office spaces. Willem, a great pleasure to have you back on the show. Let's just start with the basics. For those who might not be familiar, what exactly are work area recovery seats, and why would a company consider using them?
Yeah, good morning, Michael, and thank you. The work area recovery seat is basically something that evolved over the years. Initially, maybe 30, 40 years ago, a lot of companies had mainframe computers, which they then recovered because they knew that those things were not that reliable. And eventually it started to affect the businesses as well, where companies, buildings could burn down. There are natural disasters that take place. And that's also where people then said, well, let's start building recovery facilities that covers a portion of your most critical functions in your business. And over the years, business continuity management became a hot topic, if I can call it that. And that was the initiation of the Business Continuity Institute of the UK in the late 90s. And then in the last 25 years, I would say, business continuity grew to quite a substantial business worldwide. And especially in countries like America, where there's an enormous amount of natural disasters, and so in places like Europe, where flooding takes place quite a lot. Having your normal office available 24/7, if it's a trading desk, for argument's sake, at a bank, is absolutely critical. So the setup of recovery facilities started to take place and get momentum over the years, and more facilities were being built all over basically Africa as well as the rest of the world. Now, a dedicated recovery seat, the best part of that is that it's only for one specific client. If a client, for argument's sake, has 1,000 production seats in a single building, that building may become a single point of failure, not necessarily caused by them, but caused by the outage of electricity. But then they would need to work at a remote location, especially if they again call centers, dealer rooms, etc. Then covering that at a recovery facility with dedicated seats means that they can literally switch off on the one side and switch on the other side and start working immediately. And that's for call centers. If it's a support line call center, for instance, for ambulance services or anything like that, what it means then is time is crucial. So every minute that a company can't operate, people's lives could be lost, or money could be lost for that matter, if it's a dealing desk.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned essential services like that. I had a hard drive crash just a couple of weeks ago, and I know how debilitating that was in my line of work, where I've got to be up on air for a daily radio show. Fortunately, I could just phone up a locum, but I can imagine with something that is an essential service, the need to ensure that you've got that fallback in the event of a disaster. Now, you did mention the difference between syndicated and dedicated work area recovery seats in a previous discussion that we had. Could you just walk us through these differences and explain why a company might choose one over the other?
So a dedicated seat is a little bit more, the cost is a little bit higher than what a syndicated seat is. That's maybe to start off with, because that's what people typically look at first. But a dedicated seat means that we built the seat, it's in an area which is closed off, and that's only for that one specific client. No other client has their access to that facility. Only that client can test at that facility, and they can switch over. Those systems are normally live as well. They can literally walk in, log in, and start working. Syndicated seats, on the other hand, are seats that is in an open area, which we syndicate maybe to 10 or 15 different clients. And if something should happen, it's a first come, first served basis. Now, it might be where people say, well, what's the chance if something goes wrong in Sandton and we all of a sudden have 5 companies invoking and wanting to use exactly the same seats? Now, over the 3 decades of working in this space, we've never had an issue like that happen before, because we typically over cater a little bit more for syndicated seats. We've never had a client that has invoked and gone to use the seats and another client invoked at the same time. Also, one of the other differentiators that we do is the syndicated seats, for instance, if it's two buildings in Sandton next to each other, we won't allow both those companies to have exactly the same syndicated seats in the recovery facility. They'll have separate places. And that makes a big difference, and it also provides a little bit of surety for the clients. But then the testing and setup takes a little bit longer. So if you have syndicated seats and you have to recover at 2 o'clock in the morning, if it's a emergency call center, for argument's sake, you have to roll up, get all of the images out of all the desktops. You've got to get the data loaded up, the systems loaded up, as well as the call center call flows. And those things we also pre-plan long before something like that does happen. So if there's this call at the night that they got to relocate 250 people, for argument's sake, we immediately initiate a rollout of the call flows on the telephony systems. We start rolling out the images for the clients, and by the time the client comes on site, they're already working. In most cases, we can recover within an hour or 2 hours.
Wow.
On a syndicate.
I would love to be involved in one of those to see that team whip into action when it's needed. But I mean, you mentioned that cost is obviously a factor, but we have seen a decline in the popularity of syndicated work area recovery seats, even though they are the slightly cheaper option. So what are the factors here? Is it the rise of remote work or virtual teams? Is this influencing this trend?
Absolutely, yeah. So we did see the slowdown in the sale of syndicated seats, and also the uptake on that, actually. And the reason is work from home. So a lot of companies have geared themselves for syndicated seats to work from home via Teams, for instance, provided their staff with UPSs and remote 4G, 5G telecommunications. And that's how the syndicated space basically changed. This happened in the UK, it happened in the USA, and other recovery companies in Europe. So it's a trend that basically worldwide thing that happened. Now, even though it's happened in, for instance, in the banking space, there are still a requirement for syndicated seats, because a lot of companies are forced by regulatory requirements to have that. And it's not a tick box exercise, because we then also push our clients to test at least once a year. And the other one, which we found that with syndicated seats is definitely still not slowing down, is on the call center side. South Africa has a mandate to deliver 500,000 jobs in the call center space by 2030. Yeah. And the plan there is that, there's a lot of American companies, European companies, that are moving their call center production down to South Africa, Cape Town specifically, and Durban. Those two areas are very, very popular for these international call centers. And they require syndicated recovery seats for the call centers. And we see that in Cape Town especially. It's quite significant. In some instances, we have up to 250 syndicated recovery seats for one client.
Now, business process outsourcing, I think, is one of those unsung success sectors in South Africa. We actually don't sing its praises enough. I was chatting to the head of the BPO sector in the Western Cape recently, and we rank 1 or 2 in the world when it comes to what we offer. It's not just a value proposition around, the rand. Otherwise, we'd battle, I think, to compete with other countries like India and their satellites. But it's the accent, it's the time zone, it's all of these things, and the business continuity that we offer as well. Just on that point around working from home, I mean, I can work from home provided there isn't a long outage. Like if there's load shedding, it'll knock out the fiber and it'll knock out the towers that I rely on for my 4G and 5G. So I can only work from home to a point. So one has to kind of manage that expectation from a perspective as well about how resilient you actually are in a work from home environment. But Resilient Innovations offers managed office spaces that really seem to stand out in the market. What differentiates your managed office space from some of the other serviced office spaces out there?
Okay, yeah. So what we've done is a lot of our clients came to us and said that they would like to move their head offices into our environments because the environments are extremely robust. We have in the buildings dual generators, dual UPS, dual water supply, various ingress of fiber cables into our buildings. Most of the ISPs terminate in our buildings, which provide that sort of robust environment. An environment like Cape Town, where we built air to water machine because of the day zero drought that was going to take place a few years ago. So, we have infrastructure like that in place. And because we had extra seats available because the syndication obviously changed things a little bit, we started selling those and reconfiguring those as managed office. And what we've also seen is the other drive is multinationals are basically, they don't want to come in and sit with a lease agreement for 5 years and deal with the landlord and deal with about 25 other suppliers to provide them with an infrastructure. They want to come in, have something set up for them, and they don't want to worry about it. They want one invoice at the end of the month, and that's it. So we started to reconfigure quite a number of that for them. And then also at the same time, some of them are call centers and they have to have recovery facilities. So we have a primary and a secondary location, and some of them work 24/7. One specific one is emergency services. So that is for production, and we provide them with the DR as well as the data backups. And they online 24/7. That's basically it. And the other thing is that what people have to do is to calculate, obviously, the recovery time objective, and that's the critical component. That's what you've got to decide. Do you need syndicated? Can you afford to have your staff work from home, or do you need dedicated seats, for instance? Because that period that you're going to be down could just be the period that you go past the trading deadline of that day, and your position is open. So you've got to be careful about those things. If it's like I said, emergency medical services kind of company, you need a very, very low recovery time objective. In some instances, call centers that are outbound call centers, they would say, well, let's drop the outbound call centers, but our inbound in terms of supporting our clients is much more important. So they can start prioritizing and decide what their RTOs are, and then develop a solution accordingly.
Yeah, and I mean, all those benefits you've mentioned are really self-explanatory in terms of building resilience and also compliance. Interesting that those multinationals are choosing this route. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially when you're entering in a country rather than entering into these very long-term leases. We've also got short-term swing spaces, as they're called. There's lots of very interesting terminology in the business continuity landscape. So what are these, and in what scenarios would a business find this service particularly useful?
So the swing space, again, it came out of a requirement that a client had about 2.5 years ago. And it was that their office was supposed to be finished. And as it goes with any building project, it's always over budget and always over time. And this happened to be a company that we work with quite closely. And their office wasn't ready, and they needed a space to work for about 4 months. And they came to us and said, do you have space available? I said, yes, we have. We brought them in on a Friday afternoon, set up all of the equipment into one of our tier 3 data centers. And Monday morning, about 100 people walked in and worked. And they worked there for about 4 months, and then obviously closed down and moved to the office. And we had another one as well. That client I worked there for 8 months.
So, wow.
Yeah, so we did provide that.
It's almost like the bridging or the mezzanine finance space as well, where you just need something for a short period of time. But again, I think it just shows you not only the resilience that these buildings offer, the 40,000 liters of backup water and dual generators and UPSs and all of these multiple ingress points, but the flexibility that comes with working in an environment where I think the one thing we can be certain of is that the more things change, the faster they change, be it economically, technologically. So I think agility is what a lot of companies are looking for as well. Willem, thank you as always for shedding great light on these critical aspects of business continuity. And for our viewers, please stay tuned for our next discussion. We're going to be delving into Resilient Innovations cloud services because that's also a critical component and how they can fortify your business's resilience in today's digital age. Until then, this is Michael Avery signing off here on Business Talk on Business Tech.